Hello and good morning to our listeners from around the world. This is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I want to welcome you to another great edition of This Morning with Soulivity. I am so glad you're here with us because I have two very special people with me today, Sheila Applegate and Dr. Chanel DeGuzman as my co-hosts. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning and good morning, all.
Wow, it is a great day here. Excuse me. It is a great day here in the nation's capital. We got a little snow yesterday, but it's clear today. And we've got a lot of great topics that we wanted to talk about. Um, but I wanted to kind of begin with something that revolves around Black History Month. And so to that end, we want to make sure that all of you join in the conversation. Uh, you know, post in our chat on Facebook or YouTube your questions, your comments, your thoughts. We want to make this a interactive conversation, and I'm sure that what we're going to be talking about is something that's going to be of interest to you. So, are you guys ready? You guys ready to go?
Yeah.
We are ready at Patsy and ready to go.
Well, in honor of Black History Month, which is more like American History Month, but just for 1 month that's focused on Black people, which I never can understand. But hey, I never understood it as a kid. Did you guys understand that? I mean, I get,
No, no.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, Brian, honestly, at that point, it wasn't in the consciousness like it is now, of course.
Right, right. That is true. That is true because it's relatively Black History Month is still relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, in the ongoing saga down in the Panhandle state of Florida, and I'm just gonna say this really pissed me off. I really had to like go and center and meditate after this.
Wow.
I'm sure we kind of talked about this before the show, but I just want to let our viewers know. On the first day of Black History Month, which was yesterday, February 1st, I think everybody knew about how Governor Ron DeSantis took the original course and denied it from the original AP curriculum for African American studies. He denied it. He basically said that because of certain parts of it, it was not allowed to be taught in Florida schools. Well, the College Board came back, and yesterday it was announced that they stripped down the actual curriculum. And some of the things that they purged were the names of many Black writers and scholars associated with critical race theory, the queer experience, and Black feminism. It also took out some of the more politically fraught topics, such as Black Lives Matter, from the formal curriculum. It also added something new, which I'm okay with, which is called Black conservatism, which is now offered as an idea for a research project as part of the AP course. But before I kind of get on my soapbox about this, I would love to hear from both of you about your initial thoughts about this this stage in the saga, I'll say.
Brian, excuse me, for me, I mean, you gave us a really good context. And for me, it really boils down to, this notion of power, of privilege, and money. And we'll talk about the money,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure, as we continue along the conversation. But it's hard to understand how you can. I want to use the word whitewash. I want to use the word stripped of the the integrity of the historical and the current concepts related to race and theory. Um, I don't understand how, and I don't really understand the true agenda behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at it at face value, but I wonder what is really under it. And it's disturbing because it's our history. It's African American, history. There are scholars who have, scholars whose work is well known now just being stripped out of the curriculum. Um, I don't I don't see, and I think he refers to it as, they're not primary sources,
Correct.
them are secondary sources.
Yes.
But in research, we use both primary and secondary sources,
Right.
and so
Right.
how do you, invalidate secondary sources to your liking at your discretion? This is at
Mm-hmm.
his discretion.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there are scholars and committees who have chimed in, who have shared their opinion and their objective research on this notion. This is someone who is wielding power, and it really needs it for me. It's like it's like reality. It's like waking up. Like if we don't wake up, and this person advances. What's his name? George.
DeSantis?
Yeah, Ron DeSantis.
I'm sorry, Ron DeSantis. If
Mm-hmm.
he continues to advance, it's interesting how this is going to play itself out, and I think we have to really, really wake up.
Right. What about you, Sheila?
Yeah, I think it was that sort of wake up call, but also like just a punch in the stomach. Like what is the absurdity of it all? And yeah, it feels bizarre, and it feels like, how can a state even make laws that you can't learn something like that? Even starting there, that doesn't even make sense
Right.
under the premise of the United States government and in its founding, So within all that entanglement, there's that. And then this feels like, oh, wow, this other powerful force just, went along with it. And then I stopped and thought, wait, what is the College Board? So,
Mm-hmm.
like what is really, I'm with Dr. Chanel, like there's that initial feeling. And I think that's part media too. Like it's kind of designed to kick us, but that's good to wake up in this case. But then goes the exploring of like, what's underneath this and what's happening so that we can really dissect that and do our best to move forward.
Hey,
Right.
Sheila, can I just add, I don't know if it's to shock us. I think maybe this is supposed to come under the radar, and thank God this morning with Soulivity is bringing
Okay.
a discussion about it. I wonder, was this just to be swept under the rug? And
Right.
so I don't know that it was meant to shock us.
Okay. Yeah. So we were not supposed to notice.
Yeah, I don't think that this is something that was with us in mind on any front.
Right.
Do you know why this is out in the forefront? Because there are people that are non-black and brown that are talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a report yesterday where a young white girl, high school student, was talking about the importance of learning history and culture of all Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And that one of the topics that she believed was that there wasn't a lot of knowledge about was African American studies, that she wants to know. She wants to know more about it, and that there was nowhere for her to go.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put a little bit more meat on what the College Board, the revision, what it meant. So this is a report from the New York Times, everyone. In its revised 234-page curriculum framework, the content on Africa, slavery, Reconstruction, and the civil rights movement remains largely the same. But the study of contemporary topics, including Black Lives Matter, incarceration, queer life, and the debate over reparations, is downgraded. The subjects are no longer part of the exam and are simply offered in a list of options for a required research project. Some of the expunged writers include Kimberly Crenshaw, a law professor at Columbia, which touts her work as foundational in critical race theory. Roderick Ferguson, the Yale professor who has written about queer social movements. And Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is just so bizarre to me. Ta-Nehisi Coates got expunged. The author who has made the case for reparations for slavery. Gone too is Bell Hooks, the writer who shaped discussions about race, feminism, and class. And just so that people know who the College Board is, they're a nonprofit. And in 2019, they took in more than $1 billion in program service revenue. And almost half of it, 490 million, came from AP and instruction.
Right.
So I can only think that the College Board decided to make an economic decision here
Right.
and said Florida's a big state. That's a lot of revenue. So we're going to water down what was put in place over many years. I'm just want to let people know this AP program wasn't just concocted, right? It wasn't just something that just popped up. It was something that was designed over many years and in consult with hundreds of researchers and authors and scholars. One of the people who praised it was Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. You know him from TV shows like Finding Your Roots. He's done many series on Black in like America, Black in Latin America. I mean, he's a foremost leader on this stuff, and he applauded the program. So you have to ask yourself, well, why did they expunge these important parts of Black history?
That is where I went to like, okay, who is this College Board? Like, because at first I felt like, oh my gosh, they have power over us, which they do. But then I was like, who are they? Like, I'm about to give my power over to this people that I don't even know. And when I researched it, it's been around since 1899 it originally was a way of kind of expanding access to higher education, but there's been criticism about it going back into the 20s about them not being accessible. And so it promotes itself as trying to help more people have access, but they're in charge of SAT, like all this, the testing that is, in my opinion, ruined our schools. Like we've gotten so into testing and away from teaching, and these are the people, So when we look at it that way, it's like, well, yeah, it's money. This is why they're doing it. Exactly what you said.
Absolutely, Sheila. I mean, like Brian is saying, I mean, to me, when I was raising the question, and I would love, if any people in our listening audience will chime in, but, trying to find the hidden agenda or the agenda, part of that is clearly this, $500,000 or $490 million that comes from AP and instruction.
Right.
That influenced, I would imagine, the College Board's decision to strip down the AP curriculum for African American Studies. And to keep that revenue flow, if they had to, I'll use the word again, whitewash the curriculum to placate the governor and his agenda, then, that's what they did. And this is a body. I would love to know the composition of this body. I didn't look up the composition of the body, knowing that it's a nonprofit, but this is an economic decision, and those who have the money want to keep their money. And if you have to go to bed with those in power that could affect your revenue sources, then sometimes you will do and make decisions that are favorable to economic outcomes in your favor. And this is partly what this is showing us, that
Right.
that money does speak loudly and
Right.
wields power.
Right.
Yeah. I have a well, I don't know if we have to go to break, but I do have a statistic on like where their money went, which is really
Wow.
interesting. Yeah.
Okay, while we hold it right there, we'll take a quick break and we'll come back to this important topic on African American studies that's happening down in Florida. We're going to take a quick break, everybody. We'll be back in about 60 seconds. Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime. And good morning and welcome back to This Morning with Soulivity. We're talking about the African American Studies AP course down in Florida that was originally banned by Governor Ron DeSantis. And now the College Board has come back and revised it. And we're having a discussion about the revision and the things that they have taken out and how we feel about that. And so, Sheila, you had some important information to share about the College Board itself.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about the power of money and how it's influencing our education system and most of our life. So my numbers go back to 2017. So I don't know what it is currently, but in 2017, the College Board had $1.068 billion in revenue, but spent only $927.8 million. Leaving a $140 million surplus.
Wow.
The budget surplus persists despite market-leading compensation packages for the College Board's executives. And then going back in 2009, the College Board paid out a $1.3 million year package for the CEO, which is even more than the Red Cross or Harvard. And we've heard of the Red Cross before.
Wow.
So. And 19 executives made more than $300,000 per year. And that's going back to 2009. So
and I can't see I can't believe that the College Board has like tons of employees.
Right.
I think that they would be working in concert with colleges and universities that are developing curricula, right?
Right, because that's what they do, right? They're running all of the SATs, PSATs, all the exams that we're going in. And
yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
part.
They make money off of, and even that, like, it's crazy. Like, I was finding that, like, they don't even have those exams down. Like, they found out through a study that if you write a longer essay on an SAT, you will get a higher score, even if the facts are wrong in it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Dr. Chanel? I mean, this is in part in your wheelhouse around critical thinking, concise consciousness in terms of like putting, gathering research, putting pen to paper or fingers to keys, and expressing your thoughts, um, and findings in projects. So what do you think about all of this?
Well, what Sheila just said, about the SAT and the amount of revenue that it generates. I mean, when you think about standardization, you're thinking about a body of people, and let's just call them white men
Okay.
initially, who set a standard and who determine the criteria for which every student, more or less in America has to take, before the pandemic, had to take so that they could go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And and you just, again, you think about how certain people get in position to make decisions and set criteria, and then the rest of the populace has to follow along. So whether it's a short essay or a long essay, Sheila, and I can see, how a longer essay might gender more points. The thing that comes back to me is who's in charge? How did
Mm-hmm.
they get in charge? How did they posture themselves to be the body to develop a standardized test that initially, does it hurt people who do not come from the same culture, the same background, have the same um, insight, or have the same type of I'll just call it culture, the same background and culture. So I think the premise, just all the way back to how the College Board is set up, maybe
Mm-hmm.
needs to be examined and talked about, and that's what it brings to my mind.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. You know, this really hurt my heart. I'm just going to be just honest here, and that um, people of color, specifically Black people in America, have been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. We fight for our stories to be told. We fight for freedom, and we fight for the laws to be changed. And then there's pushback, and then we have to fight all over again. And it just seems like here's another thing, because I just want to be clear for our audience to know this isn't just happening in Florida. There are something like, I think, 12 other states, maybe 16 other states that are doing the same thing, that have basically said that this course on African American studies is, that we don't want this taught here because of these pieces. And it is my belief that you can't teach Black history through taking out certain aspects of it. I mean, one of the writers that they expunged out of it, Professor Crenshaw, who's Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a law professor at Columbia, said this really beautifully. She said the AP course is it is corrective, it is an intervention, it is an expansion, and for it to be true to the mission of telling true history, it cannot exclude intersectionality. It cannot exclude critical thinking about race.
Yes.
But I
I
think that's
mean,
what we've done. Like our whole story of America has been to suppress everything.
right,
And even this, everything they took out had to do with current issues too, right? Like how
right.
we move forward from here. So it's clearly that same thinking of, let's say that racism was something of, we'll finally admit it was something of our past, but it was just in the past and now we're all good,
Right.
And that's just, it's still that false narrative that is trying to be pushed through.
Right.
Well,
Right.
Brian, you and I were talking about something that when you start to strip away the culture and the history and the experiences of a race, let's say right now, African Americans or, women, when you start to strip away those aspects, how does that affect people's perception of the worth and the value of that said people? And you and I
Right.
were talking about that in the context of policing.
Yes.
And so how does that maybe, I don't know, dehumanize? How does that jade the lens for which you operate when there's no context of history of that particular people? Do you want
Exactly.
to talk a little bit about that, Brian?
Yes. So I want to give some kind of clear examples, and maybe I'll give one. We can talk about one aspect in this segment. Maybe we can talk about something when we come back after break. But I want to give our audience a great example of this. Okay, so let's talk about intersectionality. Let's talk about that. Now, what is intersectionality, right? When you refer to experiences of different social categories like race, gender, social economic status, and sexual orientation, and you refer to those in a way where they interact with each other, there are times at which those interactions can create systems of oppression, domination, and discrimination. Now, why is that important? Well, that's been the Black experience since the first slave got here. And there's plenty of examples of this between, what could slaves do and not do? Slaves could not vote. They could not own property.
Read.
They could not read. They could not write. I mean, those are all systems of oppression. So I think most people get that to a certain degree. They go, oh, well, you're a slave. You can't do this. But that wasn't the end of the story. Even after slavery, quote unquote, ended and we had Reconstruction, but then we had years of Jim Crow. After that, you had poll taxes for Black men to vote. You had reading tests. Certain Blacks in certain states, there was oppression around them owning their own property. There was supposed to be reparations given to Blacks that many states never did. I mean, so there's all these other things that happen. And so to give people a really clear modern example of intersectionality, I read about this one. So let's say you have a white woman and a Black man, right? You're identifying them by race, which we do every single day. There's all kinds of demographics around this. And we are going to use intersectionality to recognize that in a system of oppression or dominance or whatever. So for instance, a Black man and a white woman make 74 cents and 78 cents to a white man's dollar, respectively. Now, you ask the question, why is there differences? If all things are being equal, if education is the same, if they went to the same colleges, let's say they had the same work experience, a Black man is going to make less than a white man in America. That's intersectionality. And studying that critically is a good thing.
Right.
Is that fair? I don't think most people think that would be fair. But there are systems that are pawn systems that basically say we're going to justify that. So that's one example of, if we don't know our history and we don't pull the threads through our history, we never come to an understanding why some things are the way they are today, why certain systems are the way they are today. Policing is one other example. Policing in America, for the most part, especially outside of places like New England and other places, but modern policing was born out of what was called the Night Watch, which is slave hunters, right? They send out people, white men in that were not formally elected. They were just hired, and these people would go out into the wilderness and track down runaway slaves. Even slaves that made it to free states, they would cross over and bring those slaves back. That's where modern policing was born from. So you ask the question, right? The critical question or hypothesis: does that relate to modern policing and the disparities between how Black bodies and white bodies are treated in the same city, like Memphis? And so
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll leave it there for right now, and then we'll go into some other things. Any other thoughts? I mean, that you guys, before we go to break here?
I mean, just to highlight the systems of oppression. I mean, it's systemic, and it leads to the higher unemployment, the higher poverty levels, the higher incarceration, the higher
Right.
recidivism rates.
Right.
Those are systems, like you said, of oppression. And the intersectionality is something that I know, I didn't even learn about, Brian, until I went to grad school.
Exactly.
And you think, wow, why was this not a part of the curriculum? And again, who gets to decide what is taught, when it's taught, and to what degree, of what truth, and whose truth, whose perspective, whose lens are these ideas, or what's shared, what's recorded, what's revealed, and what's hidden. Who makes these decisions? And then again, what is the economics and the power and the preservation of power agenda behind all of it?
Right.
And yeah, it's interesting notions. I'm just so glad that I know a little bit, Brian. I know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
But just imagine, I mean, how many students are devoid from this kind of curriculum and this knowledge. And it's something that I'm just so glad we're talking about.
So when we come back, I'm going to give everybody a little bit more history and a little bit more on why this is important. But I'd also like us to turn, and we were talking offline about how this relates to some other important stories in Black history. Things like being Black in Vegas back in the day. I mean, Dr. Chanel, you're going to be talking a little bit about that, as well as being Black in the entertainment industry. And so we're going to take a quick break, a little short break this time, and we'll come back and we'll continue on this topic. So we'll be back in about 30 seconds.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
And we're back with more this morning with Soulivity, and we are talking about African American studies in Florida. The latest news around the AP course being revised by the College Board. We do not know if it's going to be accepted yet by Governor DeSantis. The stuff that was expunged is optional now for the course. It's not part of the formal course. And so that's no guarantee that this is going to be it's going to be accepted. But we're talking about it, and we want to know what you feel about it as well. One of the subject areas that they expunged out of the AP course was I mean, out of the formal course where they made it optional was Black feminism. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why they would, well, all of it, but specifically Black feminism. Um, we were talking about the movie The Help, and it was a big hit. It starred Viola Davis, Octavia Spencer, Jessica Chastain. Chastain, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. And Octavia won a Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. It was up for nominations for Best Picture, Best Actress. And it was a story of Black feminism and intersectionality, by the way, too.
Mhm.
And it's something that people saw and commented about and were like, wow, this is a really great story. Well, that's the stories that they want to teach in this AP course. So if it can be in a movie where the masses see it and applaud it, why can't we also teach it in states like Florida and other states that have said no to this AP course? Question to you guys.
I guess suppression and the kind of powers that be, but I mean, and I'm hopeful that, I think that the education system has for a long time had the illusion of being a powerful and a very important system that creates people with consciousness, and that's not a truth. So we're peeling back what's really there.
Mhm.
It's really designed to keep people in their place, and entertainment is a leading force. And so when we receive these, and when we receive them through fiction, I think sometimes people are able to integrate it more without their defenses up. But we can move forward even when the
Mhm.
powers that be are trying to hold us down.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
As a Black woman, Dr. Chanel, how do you feel about this specific thing?
Well, I think what Sheila's saying too, it's a suppression.
Mhm.
And through entertainment, yes, it might be more acceptable. What I also learned though is that anything that we see in film, it means it was probably twice or 3 times as worse.
Mhm.
But for
Mm.
acceptability, we're shown what is being shown, right? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, in The Help, I mean, my eyes were definitely open in a new way, of seeing how, the inequality just was exacerbated by, um, you know, just common dignity. I remember a scene where I believe it was Octavia Spencer wanted to use the restroom, but it was raining outside, right? She had to go relieve herself, but it was pouring raining and she was only allowed to use, I guess, let's call it a porta-john, right? Or an
Yeah.
outhouse.
Outhouse, yeah.
House.
Mhm.
But it was pouring rain. And so I believe she ended up using the restroom inside and it caused a major problem.
Right.
Just the human dignity of
Right.
what, the help had to endure. Um, it's very, it's sometimes hard to connect to, obviously, and for where I'm sitting in my seat right now, and
Mhm.
privilege even that I have, but it's also, just like what we're talking about, it's just so important to know where we've come from so that we can continue to, like Sheila's saying, to continue to grow, to continue to have consciousness and awareness so that we can, be better people. I think it's just amazing to me how, um, more people, and why this is even being censored. I guess it just goes back to the same thing.
Right.
More people
Right.
need to see and learn about our history so that we can know going forward um, what those effects are and how it continues to affect, the way that certain people are treated in our society.
Right. Just really quickly, and before we turn to another related topic, I just want to give our audience just some quick historical facts that go along with why, answering the why would a advanced placement test. Remember these courses are for advanced students in high school that will translate to college credit. So these are basically college level courses for high school students. Okay. And why things like the black gay, like being black and gay, by we talked about black feminism and intersectionality, why these things are important. So I'm going to give you two specific stories of blacks that meet this criteria and why it relates to today. So I'm going to first talk about the black and gay civil rights activist Bayard Rustin. Um, he was as I said before, he's a black gay man, but he was also recognized as one of the key leaders of the civil rights movement. He advised King on nonviolent tactics. He helped plan the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott and was the chief organizer of the 1963 March on Washington. Now, Rustin was openly gay, and he faced discrimination of his own, even within the civil rights movement, while fighting for rights of others. So just think about that. The next person is Paula Murray, and she was a lawyer, a scholar, and a women's rights activist. She is widely credited for building the legal frameworks that paved the way for civil rights and women's rights movements. Both the late Supreme Court Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Thurgood Marshall said they were influenced by Murray's arguments on race and gender. In particular, Marshall heralded Murray's 700-page summary of racism in state law as the Bible of Brown and versus Board of Education. And Murray was also considered instrumental in arguing for the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, which stated discrimination based on sex is unconstitutional. So, when we're talking about history, we're talking about African American studies, and you take out modern references of and stories of people who are gay and black women, you're not telling the full history, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. And those are two examples of why this course is so important. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll jump into another related topic on this and answer some questions about why is this important? Why is this important around, why are we bringing this to the table? Why it's important for you to know, and what are some of the ways that you can empower yourself in the future as well. So we'll be back in about 60 seconds.
You can find all the Satonic products at our Go shop on Soulivity at go.soulivity.com now. Shop for beauty products, skincare, hair care. It is all there at the Go shop. Go shop Soulivity.
And we're back with more this morning with Soulivity. I'm joined by two special people as my co-hosts this today. That's Dr. Chanel DeGuzman and Sheila Applegate. Good morning again, ladies.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, Brian. What an excellent topic.
Oh man, I'm loving every minute of it. And I want to remind everybody that listen, we'll probably be talking about African American history on and off throughout the month of February because this is Black History Month. Sheila, you had a related topic to this that I think that's another important piece that we need to talk about today.
Well, I think it's just kind of a springboard off of what you were just saying, that people are accessing this information. And like you said, Dr. Chanel, it's not the fullness of it, but we're able to receive it. And I'm seeing more and more of these intersections in our television shows and movies that are coming out. And even looking back, like they redid A League of Their Own, and that addresses some of those so I've been noticing lately some shows that are kind of remaking from the past, movies and shows, and they're now incorporating in a natural way just human beings who are living their life with different intersections, as we've talked about. And I think that makes it become more normal. And so that's hope to me.
What are your thoughts and feelings this morning, Dr. Chanel?
Well, Brian, I guess for me, I'm born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I went to a school called Huron High, and I didn't learn anything about race, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I didn't learn anything that I can recall about African American history that stayed with me, right?
Right.
I
Right.
really didn't experience racism to a certain extent. Again, that I was conscious about. I was a teacher favorite. I sat in the front of the class. I did my work. I didn't. It kind of just makes me feel like, I'm really feel like I'm still playing catch up. And again, like
Right.
I said, I learned a lot about feminism, about Black feminism, about intersectionality in graduate school. Now I'm well into my adulthood. And even last night, and I'll just transition slightly to talk about Black in Vegas. I watched a show, if you all watched on ABC, it's part of the Soul of a Nation series, and it's called Black in Vegas. And I just learned last night about the segregation in Vegas during, let's say, the 1950s or so,
Yeah.
where our famous Black entertainers like Sammy Davis Jr., like Smokey Robinson, Nat King Cole, Ella Fitzgerald, Dorothy Dandridge, just to name a few, entertained, full houses in the Strip, but they were not allowed to lodge in the same hotel that they performed. They were not able to eat. They had to, even though their name was on the marquee, they had to enter in the back through the kitchen.
Wow.
And Brian and Sheila, when they finished their show late at night, they would then have to travel to the west side of Las Vegas to find lodging. And that lodging, as happened in the South, when you could only stay at certain places. So there were only certain boarding houses that those particular African American entertainers could stay, because they couldn't stay on the Strip because you weren't allowed to stay in those same hotels.
Wow.
And I just find it, and this was only in the 1950s, you
Right.
guys, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the day that discrimination ended in Las Vegas was 1960. Actually, it was March 26, 1960. And so I just find it just fascinating to learn about, continue to learn about this kind of history, and to bring economics into it. I guess at a certain point, there was a hotel that was developed called and help me with this name, the Moulin Rouge
Perfect.
Casino. That is where more integration happened, where the Black entertainers could stay and entertain, and then more, I guess, white people also began to just to be there and to enjoy the entertainment. And that became so popular that it actually caused an economic threat, because that was more on the west side of town,
Mm-hmm.
Black side of the community,
Mm-hmm.
that I believe it was shut down, Brian, because it started to become an economic threat to the central casinos on the strip. So now we're trying to create something of our own, and it's becoming so popular. And I think it was, I don't know, it was an actor who, said that she had to have Black people in the audience in order for her to even perform there. And I think Frank Sinatra was one of those people who said, if Sammy Davis Jr. cannot stay in the same hotel, then I will never perform in this certain
Yes.
hotel.
Yes.
I don't know if you heard of that. And
Yes.
they obliged him because of his power and obviously his entertainment, the bigness of his entertainment status and stature. But it's just amazing that just a short while ago in the West, and I think they called it Mississippi in the West, like there's really no difference, really, right?
Wow.
That
Wow.
they were still discriminated against and could not stay in the same hotel that they performed.
Woo.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm just still taking this in. I mean, I've heard stories. I mean, I know some of the stories that are related, like specifically like Josephine Baker,
Yes.
huge mega star
Yes.
in Europe, right? Was also a Allied spy, right? She was brought to like Germany before World War II, and she was bringing back information to the Allies and stuff like that. But could not book a show.
Mm-hmm.
Could not book a real show in America because she was a Black woman. I did hear the stories about how Frank Sinatra and others that were part of that Rat Pack that were fiercely supportive of Sammy
Mhm.
Davis Jr.
Mhm.
Um, you know, even him getting his own show, right, was something that they fiercely fought for.
Speaking of shows, Brian, I don't know if you all know Nat King Cole I guess he was the first African American man to have his television
Yep.
show.
Yep.
And it
Yes.
showed a clip last night of him and Sammy Davis Jr., kind of chucking it up and just being fun and natural and, very close in proximity to each other. And the point that was made is that when Nat King Cole had Caucasian people on the show, and especially Caucasian women, they had to maintain their distance. They certainly
Yes.
could not touch each other.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it's just, I guess in today's context, it's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
That censorship.
You know,
Go ahead,
when
Sheila.
I hear, when we're talking about it just being in the 60s and, how frequent or how little time has passed since these things were happening and really are still happening in more subtle-ish ways. I feel like it's just important for me to talk to the viewers that look like me and say, it's our responsibility to learn. We didn't learn it in high school or college. Like you said, Dr. Chanel, we need to make an effort to go out. And Brian, you mentioned in the beginning, it was because the white people were standing up against this that it made the news, just the AP course and everything. So I just want to remind the people that look like me that we need to take action. It's time. If we haven't done it before, we need to do it now.
Wow. I think that's a great segue into why this is important, right? You know, so one of the founding principles of Soulivity is to inspire people to live a better life. And you can go out and get information about, wellness and meditation and, spirituality and all these important aspects. But there's two additional aspects that Soulivity is about, and that's always been about battling fear and ignorance. Those two things are paramount in supercharging, like battling those things and seeing things for what they are in reality is paramount for you to becoming more self-aware, which then leads to you having a best life.
Yeah.
Not understanding the full contributions of minorities in this country, in this specific instance, we're talking about African Americans, literally holds you back from you expressing all that you were meant to be, because you will find kinship and comfort and power in understanding those stories and understanding how those stories affect today. So, for instance, when I was talking about Paula Murray, this legal scholar, this civil rights activist that was literally fighting for both Black bodies and Black female bodies to be equal, it led to an amendment that affected all the women across America, both white, Black, brown, yellow, whatever it is, in having more equal rights.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that story and knowing what this woman did can help empower you in your life around, you meeting the challenges that may come your way. And so that's a real conversation that we needed to have and that we will continue to have on this platform because it's that important. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's answers the why. And we posted some great articles. I posted an article on, 16 queer Black trans trailblazers who made history. That's a fantastic article. And then there's another article on Black feminism and what it is, and you can read more about why it's important. And there's some great books in there around, why it's important today. So any final thoughts from both of you before we end?
Yeah, for me, Brian, this is, every Soulivity show is enlightening to me, and especially on a topic today that stretches me and it stretches my awareness and my consciousness. And it shows for me that, Sheila, yes, we all need to continue to educate ourselves. We all need to continue to expand our thinking and to challenge systems. And I think, having the knowledge and having the historical context and the contemporary context helps us to be in a better position to stay aware and stay awake so that, we can challenge, we can have voice and agency to challenge these systems of oppression so that, eventually, when, I don't know when that happens, but the equality for all of us continues to elevate and that we aspire to be the very best and empowered that we can. And no one can be fully empowered and enlightened unless we all rise together. Right. And so it's incumbent upon all of us. And I love the show that we continue to share the knowledge, to challenge, battle the fear and challenge the ignorance, so that we can continue to keep our consciousness high and hopefully get to that enlightened space of love and light, which is where I love to be.
I feel you, and I agree with everything that you just said. And love and light is my favorite place to be. But the hope that I feel in this is the exposure. That when I found out that it was the College Board that is controlling all of the, education right now. Now I know. Now people are seeing them for who they are. And maybe
Right.
it's not the masses seeing them yet, but we're seeing the systems. And every time the system exposes itself, we're closer to getting where we want to go.
Mm. Well, with that, I'm not going to add anything to that. I'm just going to say, please follow us on social media for more of this great kind of content. And letting us know how you feel and what kind of subjects that you may want us to talk about. You can join our mailing list at soulivity.com/this morning, or follow us on our social media channels, which are listed here. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're thinking and what you're feeling about all of our programming. And so, with that, on behalf of everybody here, I want to say thank you for joining us for another great This Morning with Soulivity. You can listen to us every weekday at 8 a.m. And we hope you'll come back for more great programming. Also want to remind you that there's going to be a replay coming up at 11 o'clock Eastern for all of you out on the West Coast. So until next time, keep on having real great and empowering conversations and create that best life today. We'll see you later. Bye.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.